Welcome back to the Go on the Match podcast. To conclude the 2020-2021 Premier League season, we thought what better than to get a review from a fan of each individual club on their thoughts on how the season went from their perspective. What went well, what could have been better, and looking forward to next season. We're going to be working in order of how the table was concluded and finalised from this season's champions, Manchester City, all the way through the table to the relegated teams. Up first, we have Harry Siddall from City Extra with his take on how the campaign went for this season's champions.
We're at the end of maybe the strangest Premier League season ever, where Manchester City were crowned champions of England for the 5th time. But this season, compared to the other title wins, there was no really standout performances, just an incredible team effort. This title is down truly to Pep Guardiola. Dropping as low as 11th in November, it would have been very easy, with the tragedy in his own personal life, to have this as his last year at the club, but he didn't. In the midst of a turbulent time, he committed another 2 years, and we haven't looked back since. Completely reinventing his side in the absence of a recognised striker, Manchester City went on a phenomenal, record-breaking 21 consecutive wins in all competitions, beating Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea and Arsenal along the way. It was that run between November to March which won us the title. In the midst of all that, City continued to dominate on the domestic cup front, beating Arsenal, United and then Spurs on the run into our 4th consecutive Carabao Cup crown. A heavily rotated team was bested by a revitalised Chelsea on the day of the FA Cup semi-final, but Guardiola once again has dominated the league this season. It would be unfair of me not to pick out individuals on such a strange season, however. Ruben Dias came into the club with a big price tag, with a Manchester City defence in shambles having just conceded 5 to Leicester, and with the pressure of replacing the club's greatest ever captain, Vincent Kompany, and he has been absolutely transformative. Forming an incredible partnership with anyone he played with, Ruben Dias will definitely be Manchester City captain in no time, and definitely a worthy recipient of the Football Writers Association Football of the Year, and one thinks the PFA award will soon to follow. Another player which I think is unlucky to miss out on the individual awards is İlkay Gundogan. The German is so selfless in his play, and when called upon to move forward in the absence of Kevin De Bruyne, he shone, scoring the club's highest goals this season with 13. Even when Kevin De Bruyne came back, the German sat back and let Kevin De Bruyne show his brilliance. I could list loads and loads of names who've played a big part in the season that we've had. John Stones, Phil Foden, Riyad Mahrez, João Cancelo, Kyle Walker, just to name a few. Team spirit really has carried City to the title this season.
Up next, we have a review from Tommy from S10 Football Podcast to review second placed Man United.
Hi all, it's Tommy Gorman of the S10 Football Podcast. Big Manchester United fan, just here to give a quick 2 minutes of our season. To me, it's just been one of inconsistency, frustration and progress, but ultimately underachievement at the end when it came down to it. We obviously started the season poorly. We lost like a few of our opening games, which set us off on the bad track. And then we sort of got together a bit, and it got to December, January time, and we thought, kick on in, there's a chance we can win the league. Obviously, City didn't have a good start. Nobody was really at it. And I just feel like we never really capitalised on the situation that we had at the time. To me, stand-up performers, Luke Shaw, Bruno Fernandes, have both won club awards for their performances this season, fully deserved. I also think Harry Maguire deserves to be mentioned in there. Obviously, we've seen at the back end of the season what happens when you take him out of that United side, and you have to play the likes of Bailly and Lindelof together. It's just not a combination that works. And I'd also like to say that Edinson Cavani's been a revelation, like 33, 34-year-old striker being bought in. A lot had reservations, myself included, but he's been fantastic. And now that he's re-signed, we've got a squad that could potentially challenge with a few additions. It's a good time to be a Manchester United fan. My favourite moment of the season would have to be a game that we didn't actually play in the end. Getting Liverpool called off at home on the 2nd of May. It was a massive statement towards the ownership of our club. Obviously, they've vowed to have open dialogue with us now about the future of Manchester United, which I think is massively important. And I just thought that night and that day was monumental in potentially securing 50+1 or a change of ownership of the club. I think it's enormous. Just think, like, the moments to forget of this season, like the Sheffield United's at home, disaster, Everton, West Brom, we've had a few absolutely shocking outlier results, and obviously the Europa League final just gone. I think if we win that, it's maybe a successful season. But as it is, it's just progress. I did feel gutted for David De Gea, having missed the penalty, obviously, which lost us the game. And to me, it's not his fault for missing the penalty. Obviously, he's a goalkeeper. You're not expected to be able to take penalties. But to not save one was really disappointing. Obviously, our performance in the FA Cup as well, I just thought we went out with a bit of a whimper at Leicester. Obviously, ended up winning the competition. So I felt like that we could have done better there as well. And yeah, optimistic for next year, hoping we can go one further and challenge. Nice one.
In third place, we have last season's champions, Liverpool, with a review from Dan Clubb from World Football Index and James Pearce from The Athletic.
It's a really difficult season to review from a Liverpool point of view because having started with the highest expectations we've had for some time, to look at it now and say we finished third, didn't particularly go far in the domestic cups and quarterfinals of the Champions League, you'd arguably look at that as a disappointment. But given how it's transpired, I think it's a massive achievement to get into that Champions League for next season. I've said for some time this year that it would be a shame if what's a pretty forgettable campaign for many ways impacted what could be a brilliant season next year with fans back and obviously all the key players back. So I'm just delighted that this soulless, no fans season that we've all had to endure isn't going to impact what could be a really, really special one next year. So overall, I'm pretty made up with the campaign. But when you look back, we all know what happened in the early weeks with a bit inconsistent in terms of performances, but what happened at Villa, obviously, and stuff. But I think when we lost Van Dijk, we all knew it was a massive blow, but we looked like we'd coped with that. And we all kind of thought, okay, we can press on it, and you never know. We kind of stayed in and around the top of the table. And then Gomez went and you thought, okay, that's pretty tough. But then Fabinho was so good. And I think we all kind of got ahead of ourselves, not ahead of ourselves, but maybe thought, okay, we can press on and we can still challenge. But realistically, I think to maintain the sort of title-winning form without them two was just not going to happen. And then obviously we lost Matip and it all kind of fell apart. At the seams, really, understandably, to lose those players. And it just seemed like every week before a match there'd be Twitter rumours flying around that you'd normally just ignore. But they ended up being true about another player who was injured. So it was pretty wretched in many ways. In terms of positives, you look at Thiago's form in the last few weeks, you can't really shy away from that. Phillips, who's been outstanding for us recently. Jota has shown that he can definitely make an impact. Hopefully with a full season next year. So there have been positives, and it's strange to say that in terms of, like I say, a wholly forgettable season, really, for everyone across the Premier League, I think when we look back on this campaign in a couple of seasons, a couple of years' time, we'll kind of think, God, that was pretty lifeless in many ways, that Premier League. But for moments for Liverpool, I think we can't really look away from Alisson. Like that, to get us into the Champions League essentially with a header in the dying seconds of a game, your goalkeeper is just Liverpool through and through, really. So, yeah, overall, we probably did the best we could have done out of it. And, Jurgen Klopp just proves once again he is a proper genius. And yeah, let's all look forward to next season with everyone back.
I mean, it was such a roller coaster season for Liverpool when you think that at the turn of the year they were top of the Premier League table, 33 points from 16 games, and fans were at that point still dreaming about retaining the title, even though they'd by then had lost, of course, Virgil van Dijk to a ruptured ACL and Joe Gomez to a serious knee injury as well. But then the wheels absolutely came off for a few months in kind of that bleak winter that Liverpool endured. I think it was 10 points out of a possible 36. It was almost relegation form in that middle third of the season. Of course, that unprecedented run of 6 successive home league defeats, having gone 68 home league games unbeaten before then, and certainly after they lost at home to a doomed Fulham team in early March, I think most Liverpool fans just could not wait for this season to end. It just looked like it had completely derailed and gone off course and was almost beyond repair. But I think you've got to give Klopp and you've got to give the players a huge amount of respect and admiration, because to pull it out in the way they did, to take 26 points out of the last 30, and to not just manage to make a late bid for the top four, but to actually finish third. It was just an absolutely remarkable effort. It was. I must admit, I'd be lying if I thought that they were capable of pulling that off, because it was just looked to be so much wrong in terms of so vulnerable defensively, and they'd really lost their sparkle going forward. But Klopp managed to get some belief back, and he managed to get some fluency back into Liverpool's attacking football. You'd obviously have to say Mohamed Salah, by far and away Liverpool's player of the season. 31 goals in all competitions, 22 in the league, just missing out to Harry Kane for the Golden Boot. Another remarkable effort from him. And he kept Liverpool, kept their heads above water really when times when Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino endured really difficult periods. And of course Jota was excellent after his arrival from Wolves, but he had his injury issues as well and was sorely missed. So when you think that Klopp got through 20 centre-back pairings, to lose all three of your senior centre-backs to season-ending injuries was absolutely ridiculous. So and I think at any evaluation of the season you have to give big praise as well to Nat Phillips and Reece Williams, who certainly in the latter part of the season really stood up and delivered for all Liverpool supporters. And Andy Robertson as well. He's an absolute machine, the way he manages to keep going, and Trent Alexander-Arnold producing the absolute, perfect riposte to all the criticism he'd had after being left out by England. And, of course, if you're looking for iconic moments, then you just can't look beyond that remarkable dramatic header from Alisson Becker to win the game at West Brom and keep Liverpool on course for the top four. What was a very difficult season for Liverpool ultimately ended triumphantly, and the Klopp reign is firmly back on track, and I think it makes you believe that they'll be back up there competing for the top prizes again next season.
Up next, we have this season's champions of Europe and fourth placed Chelsea, with a review from Michael from At The Bridge podcast.
What's up everyone, Mikey here from At The Bridge pod. What a season. I mean, it really has been an incredible season for so many reasons. I mean, I think the end has got to be the positive for Chelsea. I mean, we started, it's a season of two halves. Obviously, the first half under Lampard, not so good. And then the second half under Tuchel, which has been absolutely wildest dreams. I mean, an FA Cup final, a Champions League final, irrelevant if we don't lift any silverware. Because we were in ninth when Tuchel took us over, and we'd have never expected to be in the position we are now. We did get the top four; that was the main goal. Of course, we had to rely on Spurs, so it was very grateful for Gareth Bale and co to do us a favour. But let's look at the stats. I mean, under Lampard, we were scoring more goals per 90, not by much, 1.7 to 1.3. But it's the goals conceded per 90 that have been dramatically halved. I mean, we've gone from conceding 1.2 per game to now just 0.6. That's an outstanding figure. And the defeat percentage, it gone from 32% to 15.5%. You can see the improvement, and it's only going to get better, I feel, once we've had a full pre-season, a normal pre-season. I mean, I know we've got Euro 2020 coming up, but still, that full pre-season helps dramatically. For me, the takeaways are new manager, new structure, new mentality. We need a striker, that's clear. If we put away those chances, we will be challenging for the title next season. No questions asked. It was great to see fans back in at the end of the season as well. I think that roar, you cannot get that from fake tinned crowd noise that we've been accustomed to over the past year for obvious reasons. Hearing the actual reaction to a game or an event within a game, it just warms the heart. It's brilliant. It's why we love sport in general. The fans make football. Fans make sport. Fans make it better. And I, for one, cannot wait for what the 2021-2022 season has in store for not just Chelsea, but for football and soccer in general.
In 5th place, we have Leicester, who were also this season's FA Cup winners, with a review from Sam Martin from Fox's Fancast.
Hiya, my name's Sam Martin. I'm a Leicester fan. I've been all my life, been up through the ups and the downs. In terms of a end of season review, it's been a weird one for us as Leicester fans. I guess if you went back to the start of the season and someone offered us 5th place and an FA Cup win, I think every Leicester fan would snap your hand off for it. But given the circumstances, being in top 4 all season and then dropping out, that's obviously disappointing. I think as fans, it's been a good season, and we've been through the ups, the downs, and that's just life as a Leicester City fan. We've got sort of a lot of young lads, which is sort of really quite interesting, and providing we keep them, then we should be in a great position. We've spent a lot of money on a new training ground, so that's another thing. Europa League, that was a bit disappointing. Our run in that, we got beat by Sparta Prague. You'd have to think that on another day we could go further. But we've got it all to come next year. And yeah, it's disappointing that we didn't finish in the Champions League, but at the same time, we've got a lot of things to be excited about for next season. Hopefully with some sort of new additions in, a bit of depth, strengthening to the squad, then yeah, we'll be spot on. Player of the season for me, definitely Youri Tielemans. Been absolute magic, and that goal in the FA Cup final just sort of tipped that off. And then you've got Iheanacho, Fofana, some really good young lads. James Justin before he got injured. They'd all be up there, but yeah. So overall, got to be happy with it. You bit your hand off for it at the start of the season. In hindsight, it's easy to be a little bit disappointed, but yeah, it's a good one for us.
In 6th place, and this season's surprise package, West Ham United, with a review from James Jones from We Are West Ham podcast.
What a season. Almost lost for words a little bit, but David Moyes has completely transformed West Ham United Football Club in the space of, 12 months, 18 months. At the beginning of this season, we lost our first 2 games on the back of just staying up last year, on the back of a difficult season, obviously because of coronavirus and everything. David Moyes came in after Pellegrini left and kept us up for the second time. And we went into this season losing our first 2 games, an atrocious performance on the opening day of the season at home to Newcastle, losing 2-0. And we feared the worst again. We feared a repeat of the last 2 or 3 seasons where we've battled for our survival in the top flight, and instead David Moyes and the team completely delivered something that wasn't even in our wildest dreams at the beginning of the season, and here we are in May, having finished 6th in the Premier League. We're guaranteed to be in the Europa League group stages next season for the first time, and it was a record-breaking season as well. Most Premier League points in a season for the club, most wins in a season with 19, most away wins in a season with I think about 9 or 10, and the players and the recruitment behind. First and foremost, the recruitment was just incredible. Soufal and Souček, probably arguably 2 of the signings of the season. Dawson, surprisingly enough, was a bit of a rock at the back when he came in midway through the campaign. Lingard, obviously, the standout signing who arrived in January. Hopefully he stays and we can get him back on a more permanent deal. But the performances all season, the mentality behind the team, the big one that stands out was the Spurs 3-3, the Lanzini last-minute equaliser. Being 3-0 down with 8 minutes to go, you think that's dead and buried, especially against your bitter rivals. And to get that back to 3-0 and the way that we did it, that was testament to the mentality that David Moyes has instilled in this squad. And then we just saw it get better and better and better. We began to tail off a little bit towards the end of the season, missed out on the top 4 as a result, but we'll take 6th all day long. And I and every single West Ham fan on this planet right now are absolutely delighted and just can't wait for next season to start. And hopefully we can build on this. getting top 6 next year once fans are back in the ground will be difficult, but if we're challenging in the top half of the table, a good European campaign, maybe go for one of the cups, as long as we see progress, then I think we'll be happy. And David Moyes, I really believe, having initially many believed him not being the right man to take the club forward, turns out that he might actually be the right man. So long may this continue. I'm going to enjoy the summer, and I can't wait for a European tour next year. Come on, you Irons.
In 7th place, we have Tottenham Hotspur with a review from Ben Boreham.
Well, where to start when you're reviewing what happened this season with Tottenham Hotspur? The start of the season was excellent. Winning 5-2 away at Southampton, 6-1 away at Manchester United. Harry Kane and Heung-min-son were scoring for fun. They were the most deadly partnership, arguably, in football at the time. Beating Manchester City comfortably, beating Arsenal at home on December the 6th to go top of the Premier League at the time. Then about the Christmas period is where things started to unwind. We were playing too negative. We kept losing leads in games late on. There was a lack of confidence you could see in the side when they played. There were rumours coming out in the dressing room about players being unhappy with Jose Mourinho's tactics. And, despite the brilliance of Harry Kane all season, which, I dread to think where Spurs would have finished without him, you could just see it got worse and worse. It culminated, of course, with the horrible Europa League exit to Zagreb. And in general, the league performances just continued to decline until Mourinho was sacked. Overall, this season was a season that started out so promisingly, and then just completely disintegrated it once the new year arrived. Star man of the season is no question Harry Kane. Not just to be the top scorer, but the top assister in the league as well. It just proves how invaluable he is to us and why Spurs should do everything possible to keep hold of him this summer, whatever it costs.
Up next, in 8th place, we have Arsenal with a review from Pet from State of Play podcast.
Arsenal would have actually gone into this season with a lot of optimism after the win over Chelsea in the FA Cup final, one that they were underdogs for after beating Man City in the semi-finals. And over the summer, they made some decent acquisitions into the form of Thomas Partey, Gabriel as well, and of course, a not-so-decent addition of Willian, which we'll talk about, I guess, further on in this little clip. Season started okay in terms of the Premier League. The first 3 games were handled fairly easily by Arsenal, and then came probably the worst form that Arsenal have had for 100 years. They were sitting in the dire position of 16th at one point, which was not very good. People called for Arteta's position to be looked at under more scrutiny. Arsenal had even more turbulence kind of at a similar time or just before the season with Raul Sanllehi leaving and a lot of the other exec team leaving, meaning that after what had happened on the pitch at the beginning of the season, come Christmas time, the kind of position and uncertainty of the club over the club was really, really high. Like there was this cloud that was hanging above Arsenal Football Club that was so horrible. We had 2 men at the helm who were inexperienced, who were basically tasked with rebuilding a massive football club, and things weren't working on the pitch. Off the pitch, Thomas Partey, a big acquisition, was constantly injured for the first part of the season. Gabriel had a stellar start to the season. He was Arsenal's best player by a mile, and Willian was obviously Willian. So to say that the off-the-pitch business was mixed is an absolute understatement. And then we went into the Christmas period where Arsenal experimented with a 4-2-3-1. The game against Chelsea at home was the first game where Emile Smith-Rowe was introduced. We saw Bukayo Saka on the right wing for the first time, and we saw Lacazette leading that line with Martinelli on the left, who hadn't played in, I think, 9 to 12 months. And that was a real catalyst for change for Arsenal, because it finally created some sort of link between the midfield and the attack, and that link was Emile Smith-Rowe with a big helping hand from Lacazette, who was also dropping deep and doing really well. So that was a big turning point. The shift 4-2-3-1, the kind of Xhaka started playing very well as well. We even had Danny Ceballos for a little period of time playing reasonably well. Thomas Partey came back into the fold, and I vividly remember the game against Wolves away, where for 45 minutes Arsenal were the best I'd seen him in years almost. I mean, the back end of Wenger's reign was pretty poor in terms of the last 6 to 9, 12 months, even though a lot of the underlying statistics are still good. Emery's reign was obviously, very, very mixed, to say the least. Even when we were doing well, the underlying statistics were terrible. But with Arteta, there was this kind of, when we were bad, and the stats showed that. When we were good, we were very good, and the stats showed that. And even in games where the underlying stats were bad, we were kind of built to play that way from a counter-attacking standpoint, from a 3 at the back, soak up pressure, take on lots of pressure and break and rely on a world-class finisher and Aubameyang to score goals. It's always been kind of what we've got. And the game against Wolves was really interesting to me because we had Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey, who hadn't played that many games together. There was a few statistics about how they weren't passing to each other that much and stuff like that, which I thought was a load of nonsense. But that game showcased to me what I thought was kind of very interesting in terms of what Arteta could build with Arsenal. And obviously, as the season went on, Arsenal's only route into Champions League football seemingly was the Europa League. They did reasonably well to get to the semi-final, and then lost as favourites against Villarreal over 2 legs. They were truly Emeried, who then obviously went on to win the Europa League for the 4th time in his career, which is incredibly impressive. And Arsenal finished the Premier League season with kind of a 5 on the bounce, which meant that their finishing position of 8th was not as terrible as it could have been. And I think post-Christmas, Arsenal were the 2nd best team in the league. So you'd hope that next season they can build on that form and push for the top 4, if not come at least in the top 6. And that should be the aim, especially after a very, very busy transfer window where you'd expect several outgoings and a lot of players coming in for Arsenal. So stay tuned for next season.
In 9th place, we have one of the promoted sides from last season in Leeds United. We have 2 reviews. Firstly, we have Oscar from All Leeds TV, and secondly, Paul from Leeds That.
It's been a great first season back for Leeds United. It's not always been plain sailing for Leeds, but all in all, we can't argue with the season. It's been a solid 9 out of 10 seasons. Finishing in the top 10 is no mean feat for a newly promoted team. I think we've had a lot of injuries throughout the season as well. Not really had that settled back 4. For much of the season, we've had to play Luke Ayling at centre-back quite a lot. We've had to play Calvin Phillips at centre-back. We've had to play different players in all sorts of positions. But when we did get Llorente back, Robin Koch back, and got that settled back 4, we were much better defensively. And I think the attacking output's been fantastic throughout the season. We've scored 62 goals this season, which is the most for a newly promoted team, which is absolutely superb. And that's what you expect from a Bielsa team. I think before the season started, I was kind of expecting us to finish around 12th. I never thought we were going to go down. And I think throughout the season, we've never looked like going down. We've always looked comfortable and settled at this level. There's been the odd game where, when we've been off it, we've been hammered, really. We've lost really heavily, and I think in the Championship you can get away with that, and that's been a bit of a learning curve for us, that we've got to be 100% on it every single game, because you get found out at this level. The quality difference is huge, but we've done fine. We've done fine in that respect. I think a lot of players are growing this season. I think Stuart Dallas is the first one. He's been player of the season by a mile. I think he probably should have been in the PFA team of the year, or should be in the PFA team of the year rather. I doubt he'll get in there, but he's been absolutely superb. He's gone into midfield, and we used to call him the Cuxdown Cafu. This season he's become the Cuxdown Kimmich, really. He's just been fantastic, and so many players are growing. Rodrigo finished the season really well. Our big signing in the summer. Initially disappointing. Had COVID, had injuries, but he's come back and finished the season really well. So I think all in all, we look at it now and think the opportunity is really there to kick on more than anything. And the confidence is huge. We finished the season with 4 wins in a row. Very nearly 3 clean sheets in a row, but we cost ourselves in the last minute of the West Brom game a silly goal. But the improvement across the team is massive. I think in the big games as well, against Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Tottenham, Chelsea. Second half of the season, we've been a lot more competitive in those games, because in the first half of the season, we really, really struggled in those games. I think our expansive style of play was very much exposed by the better teams, especially on the counter, because we left a lot of space in behind. But I think second half of the season, we've really shown a different approach. I think Bielsa's always been accused of being stubborn, but it's completely wrong. You only have to look at our records second half of the season against these teams. We've sat back a little bit more, absorbed a bit of pressure, and we've found a new way of playing in those kind of games. We still play expansively most weeks, but when we do need to sit off a little bit and respect the opposition, we'll do it. And that's the adaptation of this team, and that's why I think we kick on. Of course, we've got to get the recruitment right. I think it's crucial we get a left-back, an attacking midfielder to replace Pablo Hernandez, who's departed in Leeds United after 5 years of fantastic service. I think a backup goalkeeper is important as well. And yeah, I think even a winger. I think Rafinha and Harrison are exceptional, but the drop-off in quality is huge, and that's been sometimes when we have dropped silly points, it's often been when we've had injuries to people like Rafinha and Phillips, because the drop-off with the replacements is huge in quality, and that's to be expected for a newly promoted team, but that is something definitely for us to work on.
Hi, it's Paul from the Leeds That Podcast, just dropping in a note with my end of season review. Struggling for voice today because the most wonderful thing happened yesterday. I actually got to go to a football match for the first time for me since the 22nd of February 2020. What a season Leeds United have had. I think we've exceeded all expectations. It's certainly been a roller coaster. We had real issues with injuries in the first part of the season to our core central defensive pairings, which meant that probably some of the problems that were showing weren't quite well. If they'd have continued, they would have been awful, but fortunately the second half of the season we've been absolutely brilliant. We've been solid. We had some entertaining games in the first half of the season. So many players have made the step up that we never necessarily imagined would. You wanted them to, but you weren't sure. Luke Ayling, Stuart Dallas, Patrick Bamford, Liam Cooper have all been magnificent. Click's played brilliantly at times. And then we've added players who've unfortunately all have had little injury spells, but they've started to show exactly what they're capable of. Hands off anyone who's thinking of coming and getting Rafinha. We paid 18 million. I think it's going to take a hell of a lot more than that to take him away now. We've got Illan Meslier, who's got the record for being under 21, having the most clean sheets in the Premier League, stolen that record from Joe Hart. We've had a great year, and for fans to get back yesterday to say goodbye to Gaetano Berardi and Pablo Hernandez was just a special moment. The close season's really important. I think Marcelo Bielsa's just about signed on for another year. It was always going to be the end of the season. So to go on from here, the form we've had for the last 10 games is second in the league to only Liverpool. So let's take that form. Let's hope that just like Jurgen Klopp, we're hoping that injuries are a bit kinder to us next year. And yeah, let's see where we can go. 9th was above everything that we'd ever hoped this season. We're only looking up. And with a full stadium, I think it's got to be a magnificent year next season. What a great season for Leeds United. Cheers for having me.
In 10th place, we have Everton with a review from Ian from Across the Park podcast. And secondly, Luke and Michael from the 10th Pint podcast.
Hello, Ian Mills from Across the Park podcast. Mike, thank you very much for the invite on the Going the Match podcast, asking for my opinion on the Everton season 2021. I'll be honest, I expected more progress. Yes, we've now got combative midfielders who can win the ball, players who can press in certain areas. We've got a defender in Ben Godfrey who allows us to play a high line. So yes, improvements. We've gone to Anfield and won, the Emirates and won, monkeys off our back indeed. Old Trafford, a point from Old Trafford. We beat Leicester away, beat Tottenham away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal at home. The season really it's proper Everton in the fact that we've done such good things only to do such absolutely rubbish things. Sheffield United at home, Fulham at home, Newcastle at home, Leeds at home, Aston Villa at home. And that's killed us. And you look at the season now and you think if you'd have beat Newcastle, Fulham and Sheffield United at home, you'd have qualified for the Champions League. And instead you finished 10th. Is there a more Everton thing than that? I don't think so. The highs and lows, the high really has got to be winning at Anfield. Has to be. It was 1999 as the Reds let us know in certain songs, certain banners, all over social media. 1999 was the last time we won at Anfield. So to go to Anfield and win 2-0, in probably not the best performance of the season, but a very, very good performance in nullifying Liverpool's threat and playing a certain way and coming home with 3 points was unbelievable, really. You know, I'm a grown man now, and I wasn't a grown man the last time we won at Anfield, and I think that says it all. So I celebrated with my little boy who's 3. We were jumping round, and hopefully that's the first of many to come, because that gap of what was it? What's 1999 to? I'm rubbish at maths. Was it 22 years or something? Is that we last won at Anfield? 1999 to 21? 90, well, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, a long time since we won at Anfield, and it can't go that long again. It just can't. So that's a definite high. And another high was the start of the season, really, because we played such really attacking, attractive football that allowed us to score at ease at times. We did concede at ease as well, which I think is one of the main reasons that we reverted to the Italian low block, which is very defensive. It's not attractive on the eye. If I was a neutral, I wouldn't watch Everton Football Club on Sky Sports on a 5:30 on a Saturday. I wouldn't watch them at 7:30 on a Tuesday when I was at home by myself if I didn't support them. They're not attractive on the eye, but he set that style up for 2 reasons for me. He doesn't trust the players that are there to go and play a high press, to go and score goals and not concede and play in a counter-attack and, with pace. He's referenced already this season that he's going to try and address that in the summer. So the first half of the season was great, but it was also an eye-opener for us fans and Carlo, the fact that we reverted to the low block and to the defensive style of football. We couldn't have carried on that way, and I see some Evertonians online who do say that we won the first 7 games, we were seconds at Boxing Day, and yet it was great. It was Spirit of the Blues was playing in my house as much as it probably was in any Evertonian's house at that first period of the season, but we couldn't maintain that way of football. We just couldn't. We haven't got the personnel to play that high line and the high press and the energy. Yes, you can play it for the first half of the season or the first 7 games of the season. This Everton team are not capable of playing that way of football for 38 games. We would have finished a lot lower than 10. So yeah, the first half of the season and the win at Anfield and the win at the Emirates as well were my highs. The lows, like I've just mentioned, were the fact that we're 9 points away from being in the Champions League and having a major overhaul this summer, which is what is needed. We can't have really an overhaul when we finish 10th. Even players that you want to attract who are any good, who don't know about Everton Football Club and they hear of interest and they see we finished 10th, are they really going to come? Possibly with Carlo Ancelotti there and possibly with the wages that we can pay, but realistically no. If they're that good, they're going to play for the Champions League team, so that is the big low for me. That the fact that we've just got not only beaten by some bad teams at home, but we got outplayed, and that was really, really disappointing. To sum the season up, I know Mike wants a quick reaction. Progress, yes. Progress, enough progress. No, I expected a lot more from Everton this season. Next season, huge. This summer is huge. We can't get it wrong. We can't get the summer wrong. We can't get next season wrong. I don't know where we would be if we did get both wrong. You'd probably look at, would Carlo be there if he got next season wrong? And as you know, rightly or wrongly, I back that man 100%. We are really privileged to have someone at the football club with that level of experience and what he can do. And you've got to believe in him. You've got to back him. I would say any Evertonians listening to this, he's played a certain way this season because he's had to. I don't think if he had 3 or 4 attacking players, which he said he wants this summer, we'd play that way next season. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. I'll put my neck on the line and say it. But this season, in short, for the Going the Match podcast, progression, yes. Enough progression, no. Anyone who wants to hear more from myself, 2 more Evertonians and 3 Reds, we get together every single week on a Monday and discuss Everton and Liverpool. We are over at Across the Park PC on Twitter, at Across the Park PC on Instagram. If you're old enough to have Facebook, search Across the Park Podcast on Facebook. On the Tinternet, acrosstheparkpodcast.co.uk. Mike, thanks for having me on Going the Match podcast.
Hello, it's Luke and Michael from the 10 Point Podcast here, and we're going to be doing a little review about Everton's season. Start off with, what did you think about it, Michael?
Yeah, overall, it started very promising, and then it tailed off a bit, didn't it? And then December picked up, and then tailed off again. So overall, there was some good away wins, but the home form was just terrible all season. So overall, I'll probably say, give it a 5 or 6 out of 10. I don't know about you. What do you rate it out of 10?
It was just a bit of a bizarre up and down season. I think a lot of teams had that, didn't they? But we started off with a win at Tottenham. We haven't won there for years. How many years? 30 odd years.
Nah, we ain't that long. It was 08, wasn't it? Last time we won there. Pienaar scored, lads.
Oh, was it? I thought it was longer than that.
Nah, we ain't that long,
Well, yeah, we won there. And then we had a few good wins. We beat Salford, we beat West Brom 5-2. We also beat Fleetwood 5-2. Palace away. West Ham at home. Brighton at home. And then we drew 2-2 against Liverpool in the derby. And then after...
Better times there, weren't it?
But I know, yeah. I think we were top of the league going into the first international break, weren't we? And then we come back, and then remember that Sunday we got beat 2-0 against Southampton, and that's when it started to fall apart.
Nah, that was probably our worst performance of the season. That saying that there's a few you could throw in for contender for that.
Yeah, and then we went on a bit of a bad run. We got beat against Newcastle away, who actually done a double over us. We got beat against United at home, and then Leeds beat us at Goodison. Burnley we drew against them away, and then we beat Chelsea at home. And then we had a better run again in December. Then didn't we? We beat Leicester away and beat Arsenal at home, but then got beat against United in the cup.
Yeah, that was sort of when we changed system, weren't it, to play in the 4 centre halves across the back.
Yeah,
sort of went to that low block, didn't we? Which worked well, especially away from home, but at home it was just flawed, really. That's what's cost us this season. Ultimately, the home form's just been a disgrace, really. I think it's our 3rd or 4th worst ever home records across a season, ever. Yeah, it's just a shambles, but I think it's because there's factors which go into that, isn't there? The fans not being there.
I think it is our best away form.
In the Premier League.
Our best away form, but then you could argue, would we beat even games against Arsenal away? Would we beat Leicester away? Would we beat Wolves away? Would we beat Arsenal away when we got that penalty overturned, VAR, stuff like that? If there was fans there, maybe not.
You can argue it either way. I'd say, in a way, it's good that we've took the opportunity with no fans there to get a few of them really bad records away from us, Liverpool away, Arsenal, Spurs, they're all gone now. So I'd say that's next season you probably feel more confident going them places. Well, I say confident, but you know what I mean.
We got to 2 quarter-finals too, didn't we? Beat against, was it United and City we got beat against?
Yeah, I was there for the one at home for United. There's only 2,000 fans. But that's another thing. It's just this season. We've missed out on Europe by a few points, but I don't really feel that bollocks. It's like there's been no fans there all season. It's just I feel a bit detached from it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I do. I know obviously you have a season ticket and I don't have one anymore. But like we go like the aways together, don't we? And like I don't know. I think you found that the football isn't really, not that it's not the important part, but the best part of the aways is going with your mates and like all that type of thing rather than the actual 90 minutes. Certainly for us, like.
Yeah, even the home games as well, lads. You miss it. You know what I mean?
But like overall, yeah. Like, what did you say? 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. Yeah, 6 out of 10.
Probably agree with it. It's one of them. Say we win the last 2 games, that'll probably then be a 7 or 8 out of 10. So it's small margins, but I think a lot of players, like I think the Charlison's been affected by having no fans there. I think he's one of them players that needs fans and that type of thing. For next season, he'll improve. But
it's just for me, like looking at it all, for me, it just feels like a huge missed opportunity. Like you look at some of the home games we've lost there, like Fulham, who got relegated, Burnley, Newcastle,
Sheffield United.
Sheffield United, forgot them. Even if you pick up 2 wins there, that gets you Europe. Just for me, it does feel like a huge disappointment not getting Europe at all.
Yeah,
because at one point, I can't remember what month it was, but it was like we beat Liverpool away, then Southampton and West Brom, and we were 4th, and we were looking, like even in contention for Champions League. Like, but to not get no form of European football at all, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just a massive missed opportunity.
Yeah, I'd agree. But what would you say? Obviously, Liverpool away, would you say is the biggest win of the season?
Yeah, that's got to be the best performance of the season. But we had a few good away performances, like Spurs' first game of the season, Leicester away as well. They were both really good performances.
Yeah. But who would you have your player of the season, and what do you think we need in the summer?
Player of the season, for like young player, I'll probably go with Godfrey. He's been a good signing, Andy Godfrey.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, like he may end up in the England squad in the summer, which I don't know. Wouldn't shock me. What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, as you just said. Godfrey is probably, well, I don't really think of any other young players that have been in the side, to be honest. But Godfrey, and then you could probably have to say Calvert-Lewin, wouldn't you, as player of the year?
Yeah. Well, I'd say the second half of the season he sort of tailed off, but his goal return for the season's been really good, hasn't it?
Yeah, but overall, probably a 5 out of 10.
Do you want to know who else I'd throw in there? I'm not saying player of the season, but for the second half of the season, I'd say Pickford's been really good. Since his mistake against Leicester at home, he really came on since then.
Yeah, I'd probably start him for England if it was Southgate. But yeah, overall, 5 out of 10. Improvements need to be made and transfers need to come in the summer. And Bobby and Delph needs to go out.
Up next, we have Aston Villa with 2 reviews again. Firstly from Chris from the Villa View, and secondly from Phil from 7500 to Holt.
Hi mate, it's Chris here from the Villa View. Just a quick sort of overview of the season. I'm really, really happy, I think, as most Villa fans are, that the level of improvement from last season. When we first got into the Premier League, I knew it would be tough. I was proved right. We just about scraped it, but to be 20 points ahead of where we finished last season is quite incredible. If we were to have another season like that next season with that kind of improvement, then you're looking at like top 2. So really, really, really happy with the overall club. Really happy with the signings we brought in. I think Emi Martinez is, for me, the signing of the season. 15 clean sheets. That back 4, all English back 4 have been outstanding. I think Collins has been really unlucky not to be called up for the Euro squad. But overall, some incredible results. 7-2 against Liverpool was just still doesn't feel real when you watch it back. Absolutely phenomenal performance. Could have been maybe 8 or 9 that night. We've had some brilliant results against Arsenal. I thought probably my favourite performance of the season was away at the Emirates when we won 3-0. Some amazing performances against some of the big teams or the so-called big teams. And it was great. Our first half of the season, we were looking like we were going to finish top 8, top 9, which I think would have been a fair reflection on where we sort of deserved to finish. But sadly, from January, we had that COVID outbreak, and things weren't quite as smooth in the last half of the season. Missed Jack for 3 months, which was a huge loss. So a little bit disappointed not to finish in the top half. I think to come 11th is still a good achievement, but a little bit disappointed that we couldn't finish in that top half. But again, to finish the season off with back-to-back wins, it was our first back-to-back since December. So to finish the season off against Spurs and Chelsea, back-to-back victories just leaves everyone in a great mood and really excited for next season. And I think a lot of teams are going to be surprised at our level of spending power, the players we're going to bring in, the money we're going to spend. So overall, really exciting time to be a Villa fan, and can't wait for next season.
The 2020-2021 Aston Villa season was both a success and a disappointment. Honestly, it's kind of a privilege to be disappointed for finishing 11th following a season where we barely beat back relegation. The signings over the summer worked out really well, led by signing of the year Emi Martinez, who tied the Aston Villa record for clean sheets by a keeper. And he would have broken it if not for his nasty habit of letting in a goal every time the announcers would mention the record. Ollie Watkins, Matty Cash, and Bertrand Traoré jumped right into the first team and settled very well. But as a whole, the Aston Villa season was 2 parts. In 2020, things were fantastic. Captain Jack Grealish was combining well with Loney Ross Barkley in the attack, and the defense was among the best in the league, if not the best. Aston Villa's supporters and the team were dreaming of Europe. But the season turned with a COVID outbreak and an injury to Jack Grealish. The shutdown of the facilities killed the wonderful momentum, and the loss of Jack for a third of the season showed the club still has a long way to go in terms of quality depth. Any team would miss a player of the quality of Jack Grealish, but Aston Villa found it very difficult to create chances. This coincided with a massive drop-off from Ross Barkley. Dean Smith tried to stick with the Chelsea player, hoping to play him into form, but it just never happened. Grealish showed up at the end of the season, and Aston Villa ended the year beating Chelsea and Tottenham. In the end, 11th was a fair result and a sign of progression for the club. After the Premier League ended, the club won the FA Youth Cup Championship, beating Liverpool in the final. That is just one of the many signs that Aston Villa, the future is bright. Up the Villa.
In 12th place, we have Newcastle United with a review from Keg from the Magpie Channel.
Buongiorno everyone, Keg here from the Magpie Channel TV for Go on the Match podcast to talk about Newcastle United's 2021 season. And not gonna lie, it's been disappointing, a write-off. Would like to sweep it under the carpet and never talk about it again. The last couple of months though, to be fair, we've finished the season really, really strongly. Obviously being in a relegation battle for much of it, most of it, been touch and go. We're even in the bottom 3 for a short temporary spell during the Fulham and Aston Villa game a couple of months ago, but thankfully Villa came out and got on top that day, but it was that close. But we're actually in the bottom 3 only a couple of months ago. Steve Bruce just isn't good enough. I know a lot of neutral fans think Newcastle fans whinge on a little bit too much, be thankful of what you got and all that, but honestly, we've just survived another year. We don't want to survive year in, year out. We want to thrive like we did back in the good old days of Kevin Keegan and Bobby Robson. We had decent teams, a good owner in Sir John Hall that put money into the club, wasn't greedy like Mike Ashley, and just dwindling the club away into nothing. And it's just been another survival year, just looking for that 16th, 17th place. And we're currently in 15th, but don't know how we'll go by the end of the season. But we've survived another year. It's job done in terms of Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce's eyes, but we want to push on further. We want to try and break top 10, top 8 if we can. But unfortunately, just the money isn't there and the coaching isn't there. Staff's poor. We've got a decent enough squad as well with the likes of Alan Saint-Maximin and Callum Wilson, but just the coaching's not good enough. The results aren't good enough. Training, games, the entertainment without Alan Saint-Maximin and Callum Wilson, we just can't even be bothered. It's just so boring. So, yeah, it's been a disappointing season, but we've survived. We got there in the end. Thankfully to Joe Willock. Joe Willock's been a huge revelation for us in the second half of the season. Got some absolutely crucial goals. So, yeah, it is what it is. It's another season under the rug, but yeah, it's not really one that we're going to look on fondly until we can get back into that top 10 bracket, get some decent performances, and actually get to St James's Park, get some entertainment and excitement. It's just going to be more and more of the same, just survival every year. So hopefully we'll get that takeover that we've been looking for in the summer. Mike Ashley supposedly taking the Premier League to court about some unlawful rejection of the deal or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's been our season so far. Bit of disappointment, but we've survived, so we'll take it as it is and look forward to next season.
In 13th place, we have Wolves, with the review from Jordan Russell from the Wolves Fancast.
Jordan Russell from the Wolves Fancast. It's been a really difficult season for Wolves on and off the pitch, really. We've struggled with a bit of our identity this season, and also our style of play has been a bit stagnated, I'd say. And a big factor of that is obviously the horrific injury to Raul Jimenez away at Arsenal around November time. Really put a grind and a bit of a halt to our season. Nuno had actually won Manager of the Month in October, and we were actually near the top end of the table again, hoping to break those European spots again. Unfortunately, there's been a few factors as to why that hasn't happened, and now to add to that, as of recording, Nuno and the club have agreed a mutual termination of his contract. So, again, what can you say about Nuno? You know, he's revolutionised the club for the last 4 seasons, and, you know, he's made every Wolves fan dream and believe that, you know, we can get back up there with the elite in English football like we were in the 50s. You know, best manager in my lifetime. We've been to Wembley, an FA Cup semi-final, back-to-back 7th finishes, Europa League quarter-final. It's just astonishing, really, from where we've come to. It's going to be a massive season now next season, I think, with a new manager. New identity is going to be brought to the club. We definitely need to spend as well, and I'd imagine there'll be some high-profile sales go out as well. I think we get a bit more of that Diogo Jota money as well from your lot, Mike, as well. So that'd be nice to put into the transfer kitty. But in all seriousness, yeah, it's been a tough year. Well, I think we've done well to come 12th out of it. And if I'm honest with you, it'll be great sort of just to get back in Molineux, get the fans in there, fill it out. And we know what a hostile atmosphere it can be at Molineux, as we discussed on your podcast, mate. So, yeah, can't wait to get back. I'm thankful that the season's over. Hopefully England go and win the Euros now, and we'll kick on from next season. All the best, and up the Wolves.
Up next, we have 14th place Crystal Palace, with a review from Jack from the 5-year plan.
Hi, I'm Jack Pearce from the 5-year plan, here to talk about Palace's season. The aim at the start of the season was to stay up. That's Palace's typical aim for most seasons since we've been promoted in 2013, but even more importantly, given the financial situation that Palace and other clubs find themselves in with the risk the pandemic poses to clubs of Palace's size. So in terms of meeting that aim, we achieved it, and we achieved it in February with mathematically with a win at St James's Park against Newcastle. So in terms of threat from relegation, the threat was relatively minimal, and testament to Roy Hodgson's management of the playing staff and the fixture list. There were some dire matches and results. We lost 7-0 at home to Liverpool. But in terms of worst performances, I'd say that the Villa defeat on Boxing Day was worse than the 7-0 defeat, and defeats against Burnley, both at Turf Moor and Selhurst, also spring to mind in terms of disappointing performances. But we did have some positive results too. We won at Old Trafford for the second season running. Wilfried Zaha scoring 2 goals at his former employer, which put a big smile on his face that day. And also the last kick winner at the Amex was hugely popular amongst Palace fans. I think I'm right in recalling that we only had 2 touches in their penalty box throughout the whole game, both of which ended up as goals. And Christian Benteke's excellent volley to win the points was a goal that will live in Palace memories for a very, very long time. Regarding best performance of the season, Wilfried Zaha, I think scored the most goals he scored in the Premier League season, which is really pleasing for him. I think he'll be disappointed he didn't score more, but his goals were really important, and as ever, he remains our talisman. Eberechi Eze's first season in the Premier League was excellent, capped off with some wonderful moments. His individual goals at home and away against Sheffield United spring to mind, but he, as the season progressed, began to have increasing influence on whole matches, which was really pleasing. His injury, which occurred the last week of the season, is really disappointing for Palace and Palace fans. I think there's an expectation that he was going to be increasingly influential next season under a new manager. So the club need to assess what they do in his absence. The re-emergence of Christian Benteke was another real positive in the second half of the season. He ended the campaign with 10 goals, which is the most since his first season at Palace. And not only were his goals really pleasing to see, his overall performances were excellent. And it's very much hoped by Palace fans that he will sign a contract extension. He is a free agent this summer, and given how he ended the season, he won't be short of suitors. Roy Hodgson leaving the club was always a possibility, and it was pleasing that fans could say goodbye in person to him at Selhurst in our last home game against Arsenal. However, replacing him is perhaps the biggest appointment for the club since promotion. There's a lot of players that are out of contract as well, so there's a big turnover in terms of manager and also players. To hammer home the point in terms of our squad contract situation, 4 of the starters in the last match against Liverpool are out of contract, in addition to Benteke and some other squad players too. So there will be big turnover at Palace this summer, and Palace fans currently experience a mixture of apprehension and excitement ahead of next season, but all fans do realise the importance of the next appointment.
And in 15th place, we have Southampton with a review from Dan from the Saints View.
Hi everyone, it's Dan here from the Saints View, here to talk about Southampton's 2020-21 season, which overall is a massive disappointment really. We had not massive hopes for the season, but there was definitely some sort of underlying feeling that maybe this could be a special season. Given how well we played in the second half of the season last year, especially towards the end with the restart period. We were on course for that. We were. With the first half of the season, we were brilliant. We obviously got top of the league, albeit for, I think it was 2 days, back in November. I mean, it's been a weird season, hasn't it, really? I think the first half of the season was very very tight. We saw 9 different leaders, which it's still mental to think, given how dominant Man City were in the second half of the season. But with Southampton, we were brilliant. We were scoring goals. Defensively, we looked decent as well, pressing teams incredibly well, and we were a force to be reckoned with. I mean, no one obviously thought we were gonna finish top or stay there. But there was a slight feeling that maybe we could be dark horses for that Europa Conference spot in 7th place, or maybe even break the top 6. You look at West Ham, I think they're a perfect example of what we wanted to do this season and what we thought we could be capable of. But in the end, I think we've just burnt out, really. A real mixture of reasons for that. I think fitness levels, we're a high pressing side that work very hard and do a lot of running. I think by Christmas, we might have tired ourselves out. Ralph has shown a lot of naivety. Ralph Hasenhüttl, that is, shown a lot of naivety when it comes to things like substitutions, the way he sets the team up. I mean, we played the exact same formation and system against any opponent, which is obviously why sometimes we play incredibly well, and other times, teams suss us out and we really struggle and we concede a shitload of goals. That's also been a big problem for us, again, conceding way too many goals. So going into next season, I think it's definitely vital that we recruit well in the summer. We've got Ryan Bertrand leaving. He's been our first choice left back for, I think, 6 or 7 seasons now. So we need to replace him. We'll probably need a backup left back as well. Backup right back to Walker Peters. So it's a mixture. It's a mixture of getting depth and adding quality to the starting 11, because I think there are a couple of areas that we need to improve where it's very obvious. but there'll obviously be a priority list, and we're not blessed with funds at the moment. We're not really getting much money in from our ownership. So yeah, it's a big summer, because if we get it wrong, I think we probably will finish below 15th. And obviously, if we're going to finish below 15th, that suggests that there could be, I won't say the word, but the R word. But yeah, it's been overall a massive disappointment, more so because of the second half of the season. But player of the season for me, James Ward-Prowse, did get that award the other week, and yeah, it's massively deserved. He's played every single minute, been so good this season, and deservedly is in the England squad for the Euros. So thank you for having me, guys, and yeah, all the best.
Up next in 16th place, we have Brighton, with a review from Alan from the Albion Roar.
I think if you're going to offer a summary of the season for Brighton and Hove Albion, I think you're going to give some context. For 77 of our 109 seasons in the Football League, we have been in the bottom two divisions, in the third or fourth division. Now, all the records are saying that, hey, this is our fifth consecutive season in the Premier League, in the top flight, which is a club record, which is absolutely brilliant. But it's also our 11th consecutive season in the top two divisions, and that is also a club record. So it gives you a sense of context as to the history of Brighton and Hove Albion since we were formed in 1901 compared to where we are now. Now, since we moved to our stadium in 2011, the club has grown. I wouldn't say exponentially, but it's on its upward trajectory. It's had the odd hiccup here and there, but it's forever been on an upward curve. So we've had our first 4 seasons in the Premier League, 2 under Chris Hughton and 2 under Graham Potter, and their styles are quite contrasting. But I think it's fair to say that in every single aspect of our football, with one exception, and I think it's an exception that everyone has pointed out, this is probably the best football Brighton and Hove Albion's ever been playing, given the context of the fact we're in the top division. Rewind 10 years ago, we absolutely destroyed the third division, but that was the third division. This is the top division. So I would say that we have played some wonderful football. We have a tight defence. We have some attractive looking styles of play. It has been scintillating to watch at times. I only wish that the fans were there to see it. But for the fact that we can't finish, we cannot shoot for toffee, and we have missed so many glaring open sitters. And that's been the story of our season. We've created so many chances. We've defended so well. We've done everything that a top 6 side should do, except score. And scoring, of course, is the most important aspect of football. My player of the season for Brighton and Hove Albion is Yves Bissouma. He has been an absolute revelation. We knew he was good. He was getting better all the time. But he has bossed that midfield. He's bossed everyone else's midfield. He's been one of the best central defensive midfield players in the division. There are probably one or two who would say, but. Well, I'd say, but Yves Bissouma as well. Lewis Dunk, the captain, has led by example, apart from the 2 sendings off. Pascal Gross, Solly March have returned to some kind of form that we expected them to. We have a very exciting prospect in Tariq Lamptey. He's attracted a lot of attention, but only after 10 games, which is not too bad. I can't see him moving on, nor can I see Ben White moving on, even if he does go to the Euros. Ben White has been outstanding as a rookie. There's been a lot of hype around him. Kind of surprising, Brighton fans raising their eyebrows that Gareth Southgate should pick the 3rd best centre-back at the club. But if that's what he wants, it's his choice. My hopes for next season, I would just look for an improvement in shooting, improvement in scoring. If we can carry on the way that we've been going, but learn how to stick the ball in the onion bag, we will be a top half side without a shadow of a doubt, and possibly even higher, who knows. I think there's very few Brighton fans also who are concerned about relegation next season. They see the path that we're on is a good one, and the vast majority of us have faith in Graham Potter, and we're looking forward to next season.
In 17th place, we have Burnley, with a review from Joe from the Turfcast.
Hi guys, just giving my quick review of the Burnley season for the 2020-2021 Premier League season. ultimately, the aim was achieved. We've stayed in the Premier League, and that was one of the aims. It's disappointing overall, the season. I'm not going to beat around the bush too much, but it is disappointing to finish 17th on only 39 points. Not even getting to 40 points. That's very, very poor. And it might seem a bit strange to hear a Burnley fan say, I'm just happy that we've stayed up after 2 top 10 finishes in the last two out of the last 3 seasons. Prior to this season, obviously finishing 10th last season and 7th a couple of seasons before that, and even qualifying for the qualifying stages of the Europa League. But due to years of no investment, we've slowly started to go backwards, and that's the position that we find ourselves in now. Just staying up. We finished 17th, and ultimately we were never really in any danger of going down. But finishing 17th on 39 points doesn't look good, does it? And ultimately we've stayed up because there's 3 worse teams than us. I think normally we stay up because we are a very good side and teams struggle to break us down and things like that. Whereas this season, we've only stayed up because Sheffield United, West Brom and Fulham have all been absolutely dreadful. Not the best of seasons. Happy that we stayed up ultimately though. But big summer needed. We need some investment because, like I said, under the previous regime, there's been no investment in this squad for years now. We haven't bought a first team player, someone who just slots straight into the first team, since we bought Chris Wood from Leeds, which is 4 years ago now, I think. Big investment needed. Big job on for the new board. They've talked the talk, but now it's time for them to walk the walk. So fingers crossed they can bring some people in. We can keep Dyche, keep Tarkey, keep Pope. And then push on next season, hopefully, and then try and finish a little bit higher than 17th, because ultimately we've stayed up, but it hasn't really been good enough.
We're now going into the bottom 3 teams that got relegated from this season's Premier League, starting with 18th placed Fulham, with a review from Sammy James from Fulhamish.
Hey Mike, so the season from a Fulham perspective is not the best, to be honest. Obviously, we knew it was going to be a tough season when we came into it, but it still feels disappointing that we got relegated in the manner we did. It started off pretty horrifically in the first few games, but then the signings that we made, the likes of Joachim Andersen, Alphonse Areola, Tosin Adarabioyo towards the end of the summer window, really felt like we had a bit of an opportunity. And the run that we had in February and March, where we took so many points from some really difficult games, we got wins at Everton, a win at Liverpool, it felt like Fulham had an amazing chance to stay up in the Premier League. But for reasons that I think none of us are 100% sure about, Fulham just utterly fell apart in the final 8 games of the season. We lost so many games that we shouldn't have against teams that ordinarily you'd felt like Fulham had the quality to beat, and particularly the collapse at Aston Villa when we were 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go. To lose that 3-1 felt like a bit of a catalyst for what came later, and the team just couldn't recover. It was a really difficult scenario for us. We had a really short window after winning the playoff final, only 4 weeks of any gap between the playoff final and then the start of the Premier League, which made life difficult. But still, it feels disappointing because we got ourselves into a position to stay up and ultimately we failed to do so with some really, really high quality players as well. You do wonder if maybe Scott Parker should have got them firing a little bit better, and particularly our attack at times was just utterly woeful. We just couldn't score a goal to save our life in the final kind of half a dozen games. So disappointing, but fingers crossed if Scott stays on board, I think we're fairly well placed to compete well in the Championship next year. So fingers crossed we'll be back in the Premier League, and it'll be third time lucky for Fulham staying up.
Up next in 19th place we have West Brom, with a review from Louis from the Baggies podcast.
Hello everybody, I'm Louis from the Baggies podcast, and a massive thank you to Mike for inviting me on to the Going the Match podcast today to talk about West Bromwich Albion's season. It's been definitely a disappointment. I think that's where we can start with that. I mean, it's definitely been a disappointment. Not much of a surprise, to be honest. I think a lot of Albion fans were pretty pessimistic going into this season. You look at the squad, we looked at other Premier League squad, and we think we're not really on anybody else's level in this team. I think the board had a particularly poor approach to transfers and recruitment this season, weren't particularly savvy, and we started off the season with Slaven Bilic, and he was particularly obsessed with picking up these loan players from last season, such as Filip Kravinovic, Grady Diangana, even picking up Colin Grant, who wasn't a loan player, but another Championship player, who was due to make another step up to the Premier League. So this was quite a difficult team to assemble, and it was one that Slaven obviously had the confidence that he could assemble and make work in the Premier League. But inevitably, we look back at that now and we think, we thought at the time, what a signing people like Grady Diangana, Karlan Grant, they're going to score goals, they're going to get assists. They did so in the Championship, and we were left royally disappointed, to be honest, by the performances of some of their players. Filip Kravinovic didn't even last until the end of January with us as soon as Big Sam came in. I feel the sacking of Slaven Bilic was particularly untimely. I think after a draw at Man City, I think that's not really the time you sack your manager. I think he probably should have been sacked after maybe 5-1 against Crystal Palace, perhaps even the Newcastle defeat before. Yes, the decision may have been made by then. I just think that wasn't particularly the note you'd want to go out on by being sacked after drawing 1-1 at Man City, which was an outstanding result. You consider the quality that they had, and that game really sparked Man City's run going on, to be honest. But I think the sacking of Slaven Bilic was right, but at the wrong time. I feel the appointment of Big Sam, we do this a lot. We try and start to build in a positive direction, and we always end up at square one with somebody like Pulis, Pardew, now Allardyce, and we always end up at that square one after being in the Premier League. We push the panic button. We don't try and go for another manager who we think will be able to develop these players in a positive way and keep going for a few years. We do the panic button and we press it to get an older manager in, and we've done it, and we've been relegated I think twice now in the past 5 years because of those particular decisions. Yes, I feel Big Sam has improved the side. I think he's brought in signings that have made us a lot better. I feel, the signing of Okay Yokuşlu is exactly what we've been crying out for. I don't know who at the club didn't notice that we needed a defensive midfielder at the start of this season, but Big Sam did. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing to spot when you're playing Romain Soyes and Jake Livermore in your midfield in the Premier League. Pretty easy thing to spot, and Big Sam did it, and he brought in Yokuşlu. The signing of Mbaye Diagne, although he's teetered off in recent weeks, was very effective when he first came in. The same with Ainsley Maitland-Niles, providing a bit of legs in that midfield. Overall, Big Sam has improved the side, but I'd say it's too late really for him. It became too late when we started playing like a mid-table side. I think we were already 3 or 4 games away from relegation, and it was too late to be saved then. But yeah, disappointing season overall. I think it's going to need a bit of restructuring. I'd love to see a younger manager come in this next season for the Championship and see if we can really start the rebuild. I just hope, for the love of God, we do not push that panic button again when we're in the middle of a nice little project that we were doing.
And finally, in 20th place, we have Sheffield United with a review from David from Den Blades.
I finally managed to get outside and enjoy some of this sun on the bank holiday weekend, which is slightly different to the less than sunny disposition that United fans have when thinking about this season. It started badly and continued in the same vein, and there's been a lot of analysis from United fans as to what just went wrong, and I don't think there's one thing that you can actually put it all down to. There's a number of things. I think one of the most important things for me actually is injuries, more specifically to Jack O'Connell. Now, he was injured towards the end of last season, and it coincided with lockdown and the stopping of football. But you could see immediately with the team there was a drop in performances. Now, there is an argument to say that with lack of fans, our intensity went down, and that is true. You can see that the connection that United fans have with their team is very strong because of the last 5 years coming up through the leagues. There's been a very strong bond that's been forged there after a period where there was really no identity in the team. The identity's been so strong over the past 5 years, and so there is an argument to say that the lack of fans really affected us. That's true. But it also, as I said, coincided with Jack O'Connell's injury. Now, if you look at Sheffield United's tactics with the now famous overlapping centre-backs, without one of those two overlapping centre-backs, the entire team becomes lopsided. Now, Chris Basham's a brilliant centre-back and fantastic overlapping centre-back. It's a very specialist position. And so if we're expecting Chris Basham to do all of the overlapping, the opposition just simply need to double up on him, and our entire tactic is nullified. And we saw that throughout the season. There was less intensity going down the wings because opposition teams could just immediately defend very easily against us. So I think looking back on the season, over the next few years, when we look back at this season, we will see and truly appreciate just how much of a miss Jack O'Connell was. Because we've got some other good centre-backs, but it's such a specialist role that you can't expect people just to walk in and be okay with it. Apart from that, it really comes down to momentum, I think. Starting out the season, there were sort of 5 or 6 games that were very tough games against quite powerful teams. And if you don't get a few points on the board at the start, it's very difficult to start picking yourself up. And we didn't get the rub of the green. We've had a lot of bad luck this year. I know I would say that as a United fan, but it is true. And if you don't get those points on the board, it becomes very, very difficult to gain any momentum. So it's been an omni-shambles, basically, this season. It's not been great. Personally, I was very sad to see Chris Wilder go. I think he's absolutely the best manager I've seen for Sheffield United, and arguably one of our best ever. But with the new manager coming in, Slavisa Jokanovic, hopefully we can get a bit of a refresh. And with Jack O'Connell coming back, hopefully we can see the United of old, and we can try and regain a bit of that identity that's been so important to us. I, for one, cannot wait to get back into Bramall Lane.
And that concludes this episode and the 2020-2021 Premier League season. A massive thank you to all our individuals for their reviews on their respective clubs, of which you can find their details on their own podcasts in our description if you'd be interested in hearing more from them. And finally, a massive thank you from me for listening, but also if you're new to this podcast, please be sure to go through the backlog of podcasts we've done over the last year with some great guests. And also a massive thank you to everyone who supported this podcast within the last year. If this is something you've enjoyed, please let us know via our social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, all at Go in the Match.